Perfect, thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Stephanie Vero Fields. I am the Relationship Coordinator at the Space Science Institute. We're based in Boulder, Colorado. We are the principal investigators for this grant, so we're kind of the head of this grant. I am here just to observe. If you have any specific questions around the grant, I am also available to answer those. But my main position is just to listen, observe, take notes, and report back to my manager, Annie Holland, who is the one who developed the framework of community dialogues, and we'll be sending this recording to her. She is the only one who will see this, so if any of you are concerned about that, it's just for us to stay internal, just for her. But thank you all for coming. I know a lot of you guys have probably other things you could be doing, so we really appreciate you coming here and providing your knowledge to help the STEAM Equity Grant.
Thank you. We have one more person come in. Yeah, that should be good. The STEAM Equity Grant is $15,000 over 4 years that we received from them, and only 12 libraries in the entire nation have gotten it. So for us, this is a very big opportunity, and I think your input is going to be super important. Following the guidelines, if you guys take a look, you guys can read through the introduction. And if you have any more questions or need more information, there's a link at the bottom. Starting off the question portion, we'll pose the question to the audience. Other than school, what are some of the places or resources where 10 to 13-year-old youth in this community spend their time? So, fuera de la escuela, vamos a poner una pregunta. Afuera de la escuela, ¿cuáles son los lugares o los recursos que los preadolescentes de 10 a 12 años están o pasan su tiempo?
I think it depends on the area. For example, south of Broadway, through the entire width of the city, there is virtually no place. There may be a top lot or a makeshift playground. And on the west side, south of Broadway, I think it's Blaine Street. There's a place called Petrillo Park, and it was neglected for years and years and years and years. And the residents finally got together and cleaned it up. The park district was in charge of that area, but the park district neglected it. So from Francisco to Ashland, south of Broadway or south of the canal, there's virtually no place that I know of where kids can go. 13, you said 13 and younger? There used to be a basketball court northwest, at the northwest corner of Blue Camp School. And youth would go there and shoot baskets and play, basketball. Somebody got offended for some reason, and I'm not saying they were not justified, but somebody got offended one night, during the night, and cut down the goals. But as I say, it depends on the area, and south of the canal, those are the only two places that come to mind where 13-year-olds and younger can go.
Okay.
On the east side, there was a park on Vermont and I forget the name of the street, but you can't miss the park. Can't miss it. And there is a Little League field at Division and 127th Street. But that's pretty structured for the Little League teams. I can't think of any other places right offhand where 13-year-olds, anyone can go, east of the Rock Island tracks and south of 127th Street to the canal. Now, north of 127th Street, there are some churches that may have activities. There is some sort of a tot lot on Vincennes in about 121st.
They're not allowed. That's the top lot.
That's a tot lot, okay. I can't think of any other place from Western to Vincennes and to the Rock Island tracks. And then from Western west and north of Vermont and west of Western, there is the big park, Memorial Park. There is the baseball field, which is right on Western and 123rd, but that's restricted also, mostly for baseball and so on. And west of that, there used to be a Little League field north of 127th Street, west of the tracks. I don't know if that's still there anymore. I don't know if it's used anymore. There is a little park on California and just a little bit north of Vermont, but that may be a top lot now also.
I'm not familiar with the term top lot. What's a top lot? Oh, just for top. Oh, I see. Okay.
Okay. And then there is the high school, which is used for some activities by the high school. And sometimes guys and girls get in there, but not necessarily with permission. It's a big area. So there are a lot of places for kids to play and do things, but not necessarily with permission of the school. West of that, I don't think there's any place west of that, west of the high school. There is that recreation area, but it's part of also on Kedzie, right on Kedzie, 123rd, 124th. That's part of also. That doesn't mean Blue Islanders can't use it, but it means they have to travel a little and take the risks.
So if what I'm getting is that there are very few areas where teens, preteens can actually
The
hang
so-called
out.
standard areas, yes, but the schools and churches may have activities,
Okay, so schools and churches.
and they may or may not be restricted to their church members. But that's pretty much it. That's pretty accurate.
Pretty accurate. Do we see a lot of teens and preteens maybe hanging out at homes or grouping up in different people's homes?
Basically, this was a hangout here before. It was 3 years ago. This was a big hangout area because the music section of the text annex, the manager who was over there, he was all into the music, and this was a really big area. It was coming here all times, after school on weekends and stuff. But it was, before you got here, management changed over there, and they had different goals. But they were doing other things than what they normally do. They were drawing art, even had them do some art that was on the ceilings and doing different crafts. But this was for the older kids, not for the younger kids. And we lost that crowd.
And I'm saying out here, 119th Street, from 119th along the drive, from Vincennes, there are no parks, anything for kids to play ever. And it's been like this for years. And nothing has ever been done about it. The only place the kids are nearest is Hart Park. And 13-year-olds in age group, if they're involved in sports, the baseball or soccer or whatever, there's no place for them to play. We don't have a recreational area in our area.
Really?
A lot of times they'll get put out for parks.
Yes.
The two things, one I forgot, two of them I forgot. The big area in Memorial Park, which is on 127th Street in Highland. Highland is about 2700 west, so 3 blocks west of Western. It's the big unit, the big park. It has swimming pool. At one time it had tennis courts. It has swings and all kinds of things, and it's big. So there's lots of wide open area for kids. It has memorials and all kinds of things. The other part that I forgot, and I apologize, Ms. Thompson, is the recreation center in California Gardens. It's what, roughly 10 years old now?
Yeah.
Roughly 10 years old. But that has a, I have to say this, Ms. Thompson.
Let's tell the truth.
Okay, it has a cloud over it because it's in an area that has been known as a predominantly African-American area. Am I right? Am I saying the truth?
Don't be telling the truth.
So it has a cloud over it. In other words, people from other parts of the city would not go there and would not send their kids there, stuff like that. There's been a new building built roughly the last 10 years, and they have programs for different age groups, basketball and whatever. How exactly it is now, I don't know, because it has been developed a great deal in the last 10, 15 years. It used to be a pretty neglected area.
Yes.
They renovated. It's not a new building. They just renovated.
Oh.
But I noticed when we were visiting just to see what was going on, a lot of people composing, a lot of children, teenagers composing was going there. And
What's the name of the park again?
it's John Reeder Rec Center.
And you should remember that name.
John D. Reeder was a former mayor of Blue Island.
His picture around here somewhere.
Yeah. And actually, I want to add this. The reason we have the John D. Reeder Center is because the people in the community didn't want the Black kids to come to Memorial Park. That's why it was built, because they didn't want African Americans to play at Memorial Park. That was the full gist of it being built over there. To keep the Black kids over there in the Black area, so they wouldn't come over and irritate after other races of people in the community.
I have to tell you something else. So I'm going to ask you something, okay? But up until not very long ago, and maybe even now, there used to be a saying in Blue Island. It was repeated freely. The saying was, no person of color should be seen on the streets in Blue Island after dark. I know a police officer who once shouted inside the police station while he's on duty in uniform, wearing his gun and everything else. He said, "I'm going down to Little Mexico and kick some spick ass." Wow. And everybody laughed. I didn't mean to get started on this.
No,
That's where you are.
Yeah.
It's the truth. It's the history of Blue
Well,
Island.
I mean, yeah, of course, and this is important because this goes to what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to bridge those gaps and bridge all of this and start the process of getting away from that. Because especially here in the library, I think anybody here that can say we are definitely trying to move away from them, trying to use.
I'm married into a family that their grandfather bought the first African-American family on the north end of Blue Island in 1913. The Thompson family was the first African-American family in that part of town. And they met all kind of racism in that part of town. But my father-in-law was very very stern and very strict, and told them, my husband, the house we own right now, they couldn't walk on the sidewalk. They had to walk in the street to get to school.
Yeah.
And the police, they had their cars parked at 119, the event says. A Black person came across that line from Chicago to Blue Island, you had better be going to the Thompson house or to Robbins. Better not stop in Blue Island, because you wasn't welcome here. Cars were stopped if you were Black in a car. If you were Black and walked, you had better be going to the Thompson house or to Robbins, Illinois, because you weren't going to come to Blue Island. That's history.
Can I ask you?
It hasn't changed
If,
all
if
that
I may,
much.
if I may just let, I'm going to ask the
Just come back.
Spanish as well. Yeah. I'll come back. ¿Qué tal ustedes? ¿Tienen algo para contribuir? ¿Saben dónde nuestros preadolescentes se juntan? ¿Hay algún espacio, algo que quieran compartir?
Estaba una YMCA, pero se cerró. There's no, like the field house, like the Memorial Park, where people can gather and then you can talk loud or do projects outside of the libraries. I mean, the Memorial Park has a big hall there, and they also have camps during the summer, and they got throughout the year, they got different programs even for the disabled youth. But there isn't any big locality outside of the rec center where they can gather and do projects, do activities. They borrowed across the street the church hall for events, but there's really no big place where you can gather the youth. No after school, like you can go and read the books or do your homework, a little center. Because everybody can't always come to the library.
Right, the transportation is an issue.
It's something where you can walk from your home and then, do after school, or you can get there from the bus and then you can walk there, and then you have like those resources from the library. We used to have in Chicago where I grew up, there used to be a bus that would come out every Wednesday. Parked by a bank, and then we get to rent, pick out books for 2 weeks. And then
We had that here. Yeah, we had it. They were coming over there. My son, what, 27 now? When he was small, this district, the school district had the buses going around in the summertime. Yeah, had a reading program.
So going along those lines, is there any place that you can think of that students or youth can experiment with art or math or any sort of technology or anything like that?
I think there've only been two places. One was the park district has had art activities from time to time. They may have been only for adults. And the library, I think, has made efforts over time, more recently, but over time has made efforts to bring in art activities and African-American art as well as Hispanic arts and others. But that's only been in more recent times. Am I right, Ms. Thompson? In more recent times. Other than that, I know only one. I have to say something now before we get to it. I'm not trying to make this a one-topic approach, because I think of the city as a whole, and there are many, many good things about the city if they're taken in perspective. And what we're saying here tonight is factual, and it's an important part of not only the African American community, the Hispanic community, but because of the town size, what happens to African Americans and Hispanics affects the entire city. Positively or negatively, it affects the whole city. Geographically, it's not large. in terms of the population, roughly 25,000 people. That's not a lot of people. But I don't want you to think that I'm looking at only one aspect of that.
No, and then that's important. That's a very important
But
aspect.
I
too.
think the big issue is that it's almost 25,000 people, but like 50% of it is Hispanic. Then like 30% of it is Black. But we're not what would you say, the city officials don't represent the amount of people or the different nationalities in the city. So, you know, we get less benefits, more taxes. We definitely pay that. But other than that, we're not getting what would you say?
The band representation.
Yeah, representation. That's what I'm saying. That the city should have, and then even the children's too. You know, in the majority of the areas, we don't have the facilities to help our children. The library is probably the best thing in Blue Island. The park district, I'm sorry, but the park district costs us too much. And then we pay a lot of taxes. Then when you go there, any kind of event that be there, you gotta pay double. So you know, the library is probably the best city facility that we have here.
Everything else is pay.
Right.
I would like to know something about both of you.
Yeah.
It isn't that I'm trying to be nosy or anything like that. I need to know where you are coming from intellectually and socially and professionally and all that. Could you tell us a little bit about yourselves? Again, where you were born or grew up, went to school, you know, a little bit like this. So I want to know what you bring to this city.
Absolutely. I am a former teacher. I used to teach up in Maine Township High School.
Maine Township?
Yes, up by the Plains Park Bridge, Miles, that area. I've been a teacher pretty much, or in education. I've been an educator the majority of my career. This is the first time I stepped out of education. I mean, I don't know what else you want to know. That's pretty much my career. I've taught math, science for ESL bilingual. I volunteered for an organization called the Latino Summit, which is a group of 17 different high schools up in the northern suburbs, and we provide scholarships for freshman Latino students.
Or see, but I shouldn't say but. Maine Township schools are largely middle class or upper white middle class. And do you have any experience with Hispanic communities or African American communities? What kind of experiences do you have?
I do not have very much experience with African American communities, but I come from the Latino and Melrose Park area.
Latino?
So yeah, so Latino Township, out in the western suburbs. That's a very big Latino community. So I have some experience working with them. Again, blue collar, not very many resources. You know, of course, just it's similar to Blue Island, a little town called Northlake. In terms of demographic, it's very different because we do have a very large Latino population in Northlake. And I've worked there most of my career. Most of my life I've lived in Northlake.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm the children's librarian, and a portion of my early childhood I have lived in 25th Street in the south side of Chicago. I grew up then moving into the Gage Park community, which originally was a Polish community and is now turning into an African American and Hispanic community. And most of my life growing up, I worked with my church. So I know what it's like to serve the underserved community and going to schools that have had so much taken away continuously until you only have one sport and that's it. That's all you had. So I come from a background where I strive to want to bring more back into the community, and trying what I can to do that. I was in an education field at one point and then switched over, and then I took my master's program in library sciences, and this is where I am now, trying to help serve the community. And if you don't mind, I would like to translate it in Spanish so that we have it in both languages. La pregunta era que si nos podemos presentar y para que conozcan un poco más de nosotros. Entonces, yo crecí en el área del 26 por unos años en mi adolescencia, y luego nos mudamos al área de Beach Park, donde tenemos latinoamericanos y hispanos. Y yo he ido a escuelas donde siempre están quitando más y más y más y más, hasta que nomás hay una actividad en la escuela y es todo lo que tienen. Ya no hay música, ya no hay otros tipos de cualquier cosa. Entonces, a un punto estaba estudiando para ser maestra y cambié y tomé mi maestría para ser bibliotecaria, y pues ahora aquí estoy tratando de servir la comunidad y tratar de traer más a la comunidad, porque yo sé la experiencia de cuando no hay nada y no puedes hacer nada.
I would like to say something. Under no circumstances are you think that we are against you in any way whatsoever. We need you to succeed. Am I right, son? We need you to succeed. The other thing is, as you're going through your planning and everything else, I would suggest you keep something in mind: quality of life. Don't think in terms of language or heritage necessarily, whatever. Think of quality of life in all its dimensions. It's a small town, busy town, intellectually, socially, politically, all kinds of ways. Think in terms of quality of life and use your highest standards as a measurement.
Thank you for your contribution. Yes, and thank you for your question too. Yeah, we will definitely try to keep that in mind, and whenever we try to do something here in the library, thank you so much. If we could, there's a couple more questions I want to ask before we finish, and we're kind of running out of time a little bit. This one I think is really important, especially now coming through a pandemic. So during COVID, are there any particular places online, like certain apps or sites, certain games that you've noticed adolescents, pre-adolescents, teenagers using the most? And if you have, do they connect with what's called IRL, so in real life? So they're friends in real life, not just on the computer. Have you noticed any sort of apps that people are using?
All I hear is all this Xbox.
Xbox? Any particular games on Xbox?
I wouldn't know.
You wouldn't know.
You can say that my 10 to 13-year-olds on TikTok.
TikTok.
I won't let them do it, but that's what their friends are doing. So,
TikTok is big. ¿Algún sitio en línea o una aplicación que ven que los adolescentes están usando mucho ahora? ¿O juegos?
yo no tengo jóvenes en la casa y apenas estoy aprendiendo computación.
Ajá.
No sabía, no soy TikTok.
TikTok.
Y el Facebook, el Twitter.
Porque usualmente si hay adolescentes y están comunicándose en redes sociales, queremos ver si hay alguno que es más popular que otros, si tenemos que usar ese sobre otro, ¿dónde vamos a poner nuestros recursos?
El famoso Zoom.
Oh, Zoom, para sus estudios.
Quería preguntar que no existía, no conozco de los programas que hay en Biblioteca, pero ¿existe algún internado para broadcasting? ¿Para
Broadcasting.
televisión o para radio?
Ah.
Porque en la secundaria existen personas que tal vez así se puedan adelantar si quieren agarrar ese tipo de trabajo.
Nosotros no tenemos un programa como esos. Desafortunadamente no tenemos el equipo. Sé que hay algunas secundarias que sí lo tienen, pero nosotros no tenemos eso.
O becas para que puedan asistir en Chicago.
A escuelas de esas.
Estudiantes de aquí, de la comunidad.
No, yo no sé de ninguna. No sé si Michelle, ¿sabes alguna? ¿Conoces de alguna?
¿Becas?
Becas o escuelas de
Escuelas serían más cuando están grandes. Una escuela que puede aproximadamente comunicarse con el UIC, porque esa escuela es más como está cerca del centro del corazón de la ciudad de Chicago. Entonces, esa escuela se comunica mucho con los niños de la ciudad y trata de ayudar a los niños de la ciudad. Entonces, no dudo que tenga un programa que sí les pueda ayudar con eso. Y ellos tienen un programa en la universidad para eso también.
Pero aquí local, creo que no, yo no conozco. Ya, podemos investigarlo.
A lot of the kids, mid-age kids, are skateboarding over there where we are.
Skateboarders?
Yeah, a lot.
Do you see them meeting up in a specific place to skateboard?
They meet up on the corner.
Just anywhere on the corner?
Yeah. On 100, 120. Yeah.
En their own breath.
Yeah. Because the cars don't come.
Never stop at stop sign.
No, that's part of the thrill of skateboarding. Okay, there's a couple more questions. I don't want to get too much. Oh, actually, this last one. Knowing that a major goal of the STEAM Equity Project is involving the community leaders, especially those serving the Latinx population, in co-creation, are there any examples where community leaders work together to develop resources or activities? Are co-creation happening in your happening in your community that we should look at? If you don't know of any locally, perhaps outside of the community?
The short answer, no.
No?
You need to know some other things. Blue Island has, I believe, 2 state representative districts, and therefore the state senators, and it has 4 townships. It has 4 elementary school districts, 2 high school districts, 2 community college districts, and I'll stop there, but I mean, you can go on like that. That means that a town this small has been cut up into fragments. And the location of the people, the locations of the people is correspondingly fragmented. The biggest, the largest amount of people live in what is called the Hill. That's roughly Grove Street or Vermont Street to roughly 123rd, 127th Street. And from Western to the tracks. All the rest is scattered, Hispanics, African Americans, scattered all over the place. But that means that the people are powerless, except for the one group in the Hill. I'm afraid I'm saying too much, but I'm trying to help. I'm not trying to be critical. That's the reality. That's the reality. You have to deal with the reality. And that's the reality. And a lot of the school districts and other political divisions are concentrating in one area. and the other areas overlap. For example, Western West is Worth Township. Western East is Calumet Township. But there's another area southwest of the city that is Bremen Township. And southeast in the part of the city is Thornton Township. That means several things. If people want services, they want representation, they may as well cut themselves up into 4 parts when they're dealing with the township alone. It's very difficult, for example, to lobby Thornton Township officials if you take up one small corner of the city. Thornton Township is huge, and the Thornton Township in Blue Island is one small area. Same thing with Bremen Township. Calumet, on the other hand, is more concentrated, and it's east. Worth Township sprawls all over the place. So if you want to think in terms of representatives in elementary school, high school, college, ward, township, you have to go through that labyrinth. And quality of life, states of how do you get together and get a petition signed if this is how you're fragmented. If you live south of 135th Street, you have to go to Thornton Township in Harvey. Okay, I don't want to belabor this because I know there are other people here, but this is the reality. And I don't want to sound negative because I'm hopeful and I'm optimistic. I believe in you. I believe in you. I believe in your project, and I really hope you succeed. But these are the realities that people have had to live with for 100 years.
So I have a question. So what did you guys have in mind for the library? What are some of your ideas that you're doing?
Are we speaking about this project in particular?
Yes.
Well, I want to build. This project is going to go sort of in 3 different phases, I believe. We're going to start creating programming both here and in the library and going out into the community. That's the first thing. Building a very nice repertoire of programs that children will want to come and be entertained with. We had a program recently with Corazón a Corazón, which is the summer camp, and we had some of the adolescents that came here, and we did 2 really nice programs that I think were a very good success. One was a paper airplane design project, and one of them was a parachute design project. The kids didn't understand that they were learning. They just knew that they were here to create some very nice parachutes in their paper. I want to have more of those programs, not just here, but also on site in different places. The other thing is I want to start creating a larger library of kits, different things that they can take home, maybe little mini robots or telescopes, microscopes, things like that, that can kind of encourage them to go into science and kind of learn a little bit on their own. And then the third part is just outreach to community leaders. So just talking to you and getting your opinions and getting your perspective on things helps us a lot.
You're touching on the nerves. When you're talking about contacting the leaders, I say do that as a courtesy, do that as a formality, but go to the people. Get the people to talk to you. Because there is something very real about elected representatives in this city. Elementary, township, high school, college, city, village. There is a very troubling aspect that applies to all of the elected leaders in this area. Go to the people. If you can understand what I'm trying not to say, go to the people.
Well, let me just clarify. When I mean community leaders, I mean everybody. Not just our elected officials. They need to have a seat at the table too. They're obviously elected for a reason. But I also would want to talk to people like you who are involved enough to be here on a day where you can be at home. We know that we're taking up a lot of your time asking you questions, but I think it's important to get your opinion. So when I mean community leaders, I mean parents. You know, members of the community who are willing to step up and, at the very least, have their voice heard.
Let me give you something to think about along that line. I have been involved here for a long time. I had my parents targeted. I have been targeted. And a lot of other people have been targeted in different ways on their jobs, physically, politically, socially. So, and I knew that was going to happen, and I dealt with it. But if you're thinking of going to the people, keep that in mind. People have been stifled. Am I right, Mr. Dunn? People have been sat on for decades in this town.
Exactly.
We've got a very
It has a level of retaliation, speaking out, getting involved in things that's going to help the community. If you're not in a play,
Yep.
if you're not working with certain people,
Yep.
then it's not going to go anywhere because they're going to do everything to circumvent whatever you do.
And they'll smile to your face the whole time.
And then a dagger in your back.
well. Hopefully with the help from the communities, national community, I think we might be able to circumvent some of this stuff. And if we're able to get grants like this, we might not have to ask anybody for permission. We could just kind of do our own thing.
And that's
Have
been
our
a
stuff
big
here.
problem in the neighborhood, trying to get involved.
This is mostly for the youth, or is it for all the older population?
This project is mostly for youth, yes. So es preadolescentes de 10 a 13 años.
And the parents, from the youth, their parents. And those parents are going to have to be in agreement with whatever the youth are doing. The children. You're the parent. And we have a reluctance, unfortunately, in the neighborhood, for our parents don't participate. They don't want to, they're afraid. Many people are afraid to participate. For one reason or another. They're afraid, they don't come out, they're not interested.
I think another problem, like I said earlier, is the fact that a lot of the parents here, most of the parents, both parents work.
Yep.
So we have programs and they're like before 5 o'clock, the children wouldn't have a way of getting here. So that's all I was saying, transportation is a problem.
Transportation.
Yes. At one time, I was trying to talk our state representative, Bob Rita, into having a bus to go around throughout the city, pick up students, pick up children, bring them to the library, and then, just have a bus that continuously run. But that didn't happen. But, transportation, it is a problem. Maybe we could set up something with public transportation, whereas the children won't have to pay for something, during the summer or, maybe something like that.
We might actually then focus a little bit of resources then on-site programming so that we can go to them.
Yeah.
So if we go to maybe the different parks, we may talk to the park district or to the different schools. We might have demonstrations in that education that way.
We had it, like I said, we had it years ago. It was at least 22 years ago. That would work too, especially if you go the same location, the same time, every week. But then they would know what to expect. Yeah.
Okay.
Blue Island has its own personality. and its own rhythm, its own drummers. I mean, it's not, I say that because it's not like Pilsen or Little Village or Pueblo, Colorado or East LA. It has its own personality. Similarities, yes, but it has its own. If you want to deal with a city like Blue Island, you have to understand that if you bring in the idea that it's the same as Pilsen or a Little Village or whatever, forget it.
Just coming from Melrose Park in that area, I definitely agree with you there. Yeah, and I really enjoy being here. So. Yeah. Those are all the questions. Is there anything else anybody wants to contribute?
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
In engineering, what type of programs are already here that you can borrow?
Oh, the STEAM kits? We have some STEAM kits upstairs. Our reference department might be able to help you with those. It's a part of our library of things. You can check out.
Here, but you have to look at the more.
Oh, yeah. Well, these are a little bit different. These are more sort of more for adults. So there's a Spiro that you can check out. So that's a little robot. But the STEAM kits are upstairs. We may have to reconfigure the way that is. And once we start building our STEAM kit library, we might have to move it down here so people can see it better. So, yeah. We have some telescopes. We have some chemistry kits. We've got microscopes, I believe. So we already have a good set. And it's upstairs. Yes, we have circuits. We just had a program on drones, create your own drone, where we actually, they come in a kit and you put it together and you can actually write the different circuits right on with a little metallic pen. So we have a lot of talent here. And now we have the resources to support it. I'm very excited about this project. Thank everybody for coming.
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you guys for coming. It was very enlightening for me to sit here and listen to you guys and learn about your community. I've never been to that area before, so I really enjoyed hearing you guys. And one of the things I wanted to let you know about this project too is that there will be an exhibit that is coming. We actually have 3 exhibits. So they'll be set up in the library, and they're we did gear them to kind of towards kids, but they are for all families. So kids, adults, there'll be some really fun interactives that they can play with.
We're actually getting ready to take pictures for that little game. They have an interactive game where we can put pictures of Blue Island in the background. And we can't compete with Colorado in the mountains, but we definitely have some bridges we can send.
Oh, trust me, I can't see my mountains right now because they're covered in smoke. But yeah, we have an animation station. So what Adad's going to be doing is kind of taking a few pictures of some highlights of your community, and then kids can create like a stop motion animation with that in the background.
Thank you again for joining us from all the way from Colorado. And again, thanks everybody for coming. Muchas gracias por venir. Están invitados aquí a venir cuando ustedes quieran. Aquí está su casa. Vengan a ver lo que tenemos. Tenemos instrumentos, tenemos un montón de cosas. Los invitamos siempre a estas casas.
¿Las exhibiciones arriba o abajo?
Van a estar aquí, a un ladito, para que vengan a verlas también. Esas no llegan hasta después de septiembre. So, no tengo un día fijo porque como somos 12 bibliotecas de todo el país, tenemos que compartir esas 3 exhibiciones. So, cuando lleguen les avisamos.
Do we have a date yet for when those exhibits are coming?
I just sorry, I didn't.
I have this tour schedule. Let me look and see when your first one is coming.
Yay!
So
We really appreciate that too.
let me see. So Blue Island, your first exhibit will be called Soy Super or I'm Super. That is coming May 10th of 2022.
Perfect.
Okay.
So yeah, so about 10 months from now, roughly.
Okay.
That gives us time to get the word out.
Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you so much. That's actually perfect. In our spring newsletter.
Perfect. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, and thank you guys for having me. I hope you guys have a good rest of your night.